to Lighting the Void Live. It is September the 16th. I believe it's a Tuesday. Even lost what freaking day it is. Yeah, it's a Tuesday. We're getting into the weirdest and the deepest parts of Journeys Out of the Body with Robert Monroe. We're broadcasting live from the Shack, of course. Live. No AI, no BS, no pre-recorded stuff. All, well, I guess it's just all original, all authentic. Whatever's going to happen is going to happen. What's up, April? What's up, Ari? And as we take this crazy freaking journey into this text, this journey actually goes into, well, it goes into 3 different texts, actually. But this one, I mean, this one I'm definitely doing for more of a, I guess you could say like a selfish. It's selfish. It's like full circle, I guess, because here's the thing. By reading the text and talking with you guys about it, I'm taking in stuff that I've never taken in before. I am not playing with you when I say that I have like freaking ADHD to the max. Also, Bryce is here with me just in case I slip up. He's always in the background, keeping me straight. So, you know, if he chimes in, it's probably going to be usually something weird that's going on. And here's the thing. We're in the weird part of the book. Now, this next subject is probably going to be a little bit touchy to some, but I advise you to keep an open mind because this is Robert Monroe speaking here. This isn't Joe. This isn't whoever. It's just Robert Monroe. So where we left off was chapter 15, which is titled Sexuality in the Second State. I will say before we get into this that based on my experience and the out-of-body experience, this is a real thing. But it's not something that I encountered like a lot, and I don't think I don't know the whole truth of it. I'd have to have way more out-of-body experiences, as many as Robert Monroe's had, to tell you the truth of it. So it's called Sexuality in the Second State, and it goes like this. Throughout the entire experimentation, evidence began to mount of a factor most vital to the second state. Yet in all the esoteric literature of the underground, there's no mention of this. Not so much as one word of consideration or explanation. This factor is sexuality and the physical sex drive. If the second state data is contemplated as fact, the business of sex among humans has somehow become thoroughly confused, distorted, and badly misunderstood. In a nation where over 90% of the practicing psychiatrists are Freudian, much mention is made of this factor. Virtually no thought or action stems from any other motivation, if we subscribe wholly to this theory. So if you're a Freudian, even or an occultist maybe even, you know, well, when you get older and you have libido fluctuations, you'll start to understand where most of your energy is coming from. So I don't think he's totally wrong there. With the label of, quote, evil long pinned to the subject, the underground probably ignores it as something grossly material and unworthy of any bearing in spiritual development. Much of the same pattern has applied to religions, formal and otherwise. Like food, this necessity was manipulated in man's history again and again under artificial rules and taboos to exercise control over the mass populace. To a great extent, this still applies as a basic control over our desires and actions. Watch almost any American TV commercial to observe one fact, or one facet. Listen to a hellfire and damnation preacher for another. Study the uncensored history of any major civilization or religion for the long look. There's also an argument, this is me speaking here too, there's also an argument to be made that as far as like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that sexuality or sex or whatever isn't a necessity, but to some it is. I guess to each his own though. In the underground, there was rumors based upon mild evidence that many well-known, quote, psychics were highly sexed individuals. The more sophisticated group claimed knowledge of this parallel, but nothing was synthesized from it. Gurdjieff, the famous early 20th mystic, was reported to have stated if there had been two obstacles to achieve the mystical state, such as the sexual one presented, he wouldn't have achieved it. It is impossible to describe how deeply I now appreciate and understand Gurdjieff's comment, for I've been subjected to the same environmental concepts and conditioning as many American. Even now, after a deconditioning process, I sense echoes of guilt and sin and attempting to bring some candor to this section. Yet I know this would be an incomplete report without it. Here are some of the excerpts from the notes and the early experimental stage. So all these notes, too, by the way, that we've been reading aren't in order. Like, all of his out-of-body experiences are not in order. Like, this one is May the 7th, 1958. Late night, bedroom, low humidity, no moon. I was physically tired, mentally calm, and I laid down to sleep, and the vibration pattern developed some 5 minutes later. I got up courage to try lift out, thought, and moved out and up and slowly and steadily to about 5 feet over the bed. I was trying to decide what to do when I was filled with a great desire for sexual satisfaction. It was so strong that I forgot everything else. I looked around and spotted my wife laying below me on the bed. I went down and tried to wake her so we could have a sexual act, but was unsuccessful. She wouldn't wake up. That's marriage for you. I felt that the only way I could achieve results would be in the physical, so I dove back into the body. The vibration started to fade almost immediately, and by the time I set up physically, the sexual desire had gone completely. This is very strange. I didn't know I had such strong undercurrents of desire. But you might have those strong undercurrents, like maybe you're in an unhealthy body, and then I'm just saying maybe, and then when you separate like your etheric from your body, you start to feel all this crazy energy. Could be. What is it? June 1st, 1958. Late night, bedroom, average humidity, cloudy. I was sleepy but mentally alert. The vibrations come in some 2 minutes after lying down to sleep. I lifted straight out and up by the think method and was overwhelmed again with the sexual urge for the 4th time in a row. I can't shut it off, no matter how hard I try. And disgusted with myself, I went back into the physical. The vibrations were not in evidence when I sat up, and there must be a way to shut this off. That was his notes, but verbatim. He's got exclamation points here. July 29th, 1958. Late night, in the office, average humidity. I was somewhat tired but mentally alert. I think I found the answer to the sex maniac in me. It worked this time with amazing results. The vibrations came in gently and I waited until they seemed strong, then thought up, and there I was over the bed again. I looked all through the office for a female. As in the past, every time I tried to think of going further than 10 feet from the physical body, the sex idea would stop me. The new technique was that instead of fighting the idea of sex or ignoring it, or denying its existence, I thought, yes, the idea of sex is a very good one, and I must do something about it, or we must do something about it. I will in just a little while, but first I want to go somewhere else. And with a start, I shot up through the ceiling, and in just a few seconds, I was in another room. They were sitting at a table, and there was a long white book on the table. I was excited, but quickly became worried about getting back and thought urgently of my physical body. With a rush, I felt myself wiggling into my body. I sat up physically on the couch, looked around, and everything seemed normal, including myself, but I had at least left the immediate vicinity. I wonder who the two people were. From this, it can be seen that the sex drive was never actually conquered. Instead, it was set aside, put off for the moment, while I fully recognized and acknowledged its existence. Actually, the idea came from what used to be called the Gene Autry love scene. In his typical Western, Gene would fight the villains to save the girl and lead her to the corral fence. He would move close to her and make remarks about how pretty her hair was, just like a sorrel. The girl, with love in her eyes, would move in, and just as you and the girl were sure he was going to kiss her, even after she had asked him to kiss her, old Gene would say, "I sure will, Susie Jane, but first, I want to sing you a little song." And from nowhere, he'd pull out a guitar and sing about horses. After the song, he never did kiss the girl because the picture ended before he got around to it. So the idea of delaying instead of denying proved to be the means of emancipation from the domination of this sex drive. The drive remained and still does and will return given the least opportunity. And those opportunities do arise in the second state, but in a different form. Quote, different is actually a very inadequate description. The sexual action or reaction in the physical seems but a pale imitation or a feeble attempt to duplicate a very intimate second state form of communion and communication, which is not all sexual as we understand the term in the physical. So in the physical drive for sexual union, it is as if we are somehow remembering dimly the emotional peak that occurs among people in the second state and translating it into a sexual act. If you find this difficult to accept, try to examine objectively your own sexual desires specifically, without the conditioning factors to which you have been exposed. Take away the rules and the taboos, and look closely without emotional bias. It can be done, and perhaps you too will wonder how mankind could have been so greatly misdirected. I wonder what the hell he's trying to say here. I've always wondered that. Here's the closest possible analogy to the second state experience, of which physical sexuality is merely a shadow. If the opposite charged poles of electrostatics could feel, as the unlike ends approach one another, they would need to come together. There is no barrier that can restrain it. The need increases progressively with nearness. At a given point of nearness, the need is compelling, very close. It is all-encompassing. Beyond a given point of nearness, the attraction need exerts tremendous pull, and the two unlike rush together and envelop one another. In an immediate moment, there is a mind or soul, maybe, shaking interflow of electrons, one to the other. Unbalanced charges become equalized, peaceful, contented balance is restored, and each is revitalized. All this happens in an instant, yet an eternity passes by. Afterward, there is a calm and serene separation. It is as normal and natural as this, and it may be difficult to reduce this vital function emotion to a simple and truly natural need, to nothing more or less than the application of a law of physics at another level. Yet many tests consistently support this premise. The distillate of this conclusion did not come easily, as there were almost insurmountable barriers to overcome. The first of these was the conditioned responses set up and ingrained by the rules and taboos of our social structure. Initially, these were carried over into the second state, and here is a good example from the notes. I know what some people are probably thinking, right? Like, is this, so Robert Monroe is married. If he's melding with chicks or women in the astral realm, would that be considered cheating? I would really want to know y'all's answer to that. Would that be considered cheating, do you think? It's okay if you don't all agree. All right. So here's a good example from the notes. September 16th, 1959. Upon deciding to, quote, see, I became aware of my position in the room. The office was dimly lit, and I was above the table and some 8 feet away from the couch, where I could make out my physical body half visible in the dark. Then near the door, I saw a form, certainly humanoid, moving towards me. Immediately, I knew that this person was female. I was still cautious, but I was fighting the sex urge, which was rising in spite of my self-will. I am a woman, it seemed to be a low, she said, it seemed to be a low woman's voice. I said that I knew she was, trying to hold back. The sexual overtones in her voice were unmistakable. She came even closer. My mind translated that she was indeed a woman and the epitome of sexual attractiveness. I backed away, torn by desire and the fear of what might happen if I actually did have a sexual relationship while in the second body, and the possible disloyalty to my wife. Finally, my fear of possible unknown consequences overcame the desire, and I hastily dived back into the physical body, reassociated, and sat up. I looked around the room and it was empty, but the moment I thought about the event, my physical body reacted and became stimulated. I went outside for a walk before returning to make these notes. Maybe I'm a coward. I think it's a pretty honest thing. That's a pretty honest and vulnerable thing for Robert Monroe to write, you know. So, y'all are saying no so far? All right. What's up, Pound Town? It took a number of these meetings at varying levels of intensity before I began to assess the wrong of it that held me back. There seemed to be a direct relationship between what I interpreted as the sexual drive and this force that permitted me to disassociate from the physical body. Was it a redirection of this basic drive that I actually felt as vibrations, or was it the other way around? Was the sexual drive a physical and emotional manifestation of the force? Perhaps there is a way to examine this under very strictly controlled conditions, that is, if there is a society mature enough to undertake the experiments. Certainly ours is not. But all that can be done here is to attempt to bring certain points under scrutiny. Recently, in scientific studies of dreams and sleep, it was noted that during REM sleep, or rapid eye movement, male subjects evidenced a penile erection. This occurred irrespective of the dream content. A non-sexual dream still produced the effect. This is about as far as science has experimented with this to the date. It is mentioned here only because the most consistent physical reaction noted when returning from the second state is a penile erection. It is a clue, and no more. Whether through redirection or purification, second state sexuality is not the same as its physical echo, even once the habits and preconceptions of the latter are discarded. The barriers created and continually reinforced by social conditioning are but half of it. The physical mechanical elements themselves no longer seem to apply. For a long time, the mind will continue to translate the attraction, action, reaction sequence as a similar function occurring non-physically. As perception and control sharpen, the differences become more noticeable. First and most obvious, there is no evidence of the male-female interpretation. Attempts to express the need in such a functional manner become pathetic in retrospect. One discovers in frustration that it just doesn't happen that way in the second state. Next, sensuality produced by the physical form of the sex counterpart is entirely absent. There is no distinct pattern of physical shape, either visually or by touch. So how then, or what then? The analogy of the opposite magnetic poles still holds. There's an acute awareness of difference, which is like radiation, as it may well be, from the sun, or a fire, as felt by one shivering with cold. It is dynamically attractive and needed. This attraction varies in intensity with the individual. Define what makes one person more sexually attractive than another. It's more than physical proportions. It can be like magnetic lines of flux. The act itself is not an act at all, but an immobile, rigid state of shock where the two truly intermingle, not just at the surface level and at one or two specific body parts, but in full dimension, atom for atom, throughout the entire second body. There is a short, sustained electron flow, one to another. And the moment, and he has a question mark, so he's not really sure how to explain it. The moment one reaches unbearable ecstasy and then tranquility, equalization, and it's over. Why this takes place and why it is needed, I do not know, any more than the North Pole of a magnet understands its need for the South Pole of another magnet. Unlike the magnet, however, we can perceive objectively and ask why. One fact is certain, as in the physical state, the act is equally needed in the second state. In some part of locale, too, it is as ordinary as shaking hands. Here's an excerpt from the notes. Quivering, yeah. September 12th, 1963. This was some 4 years later. I arrived for no... What's up, Wolf? I arrived for no discernible reason in an outdoor area among 7 or 8 people, all standing in a casual group. They did not appear particularly surprised to see me, and I was cautious as usual. There was some hesitation on their part, as if they did not know how to treat or greet me, but no hostility. Finally, one stepped forward in a friendly manner as if to shake hands. I was about to thrust out my hand when the person moved very close to me, and suddenly there was a quick, momentary flash of the sex charge. I was surprised and a little shocked. Then one after the other, each stepped forward, greeted me in this fashion as simply as a handshake, right down the line of people. And finally, the last one stepped forward, the only one I was truly able to perceive as female, She seemed much older than the others and than I, and she seemed to express friendliness and good humor. "Well," she said, "I haven't done it for a long time." She laughed as she said it, "but I'm willing to give it a try." And with this, she moved in close, and we had a short and not feeble sex charge together. She backed away, chuckled humorously, and rejoined the others. After a few moments and some attempts to find out where I was, I grew uncomfortable and felt that I should get back. I moved away straight up, stretched for the physical, and returned without incident. Was this sex charge greeting a typical custom here, or were they attempting to be pleasant to a stranger by temporarily adopting a custom that seems to be commonplace in the homeland? This might be if they looked at the secret inner selves of most of us in physical bondage. He thinks we're all in physical bondage here. So did Peter Steele when he wrote that song Christian Woman. Sexual dream fantasies caused by some early sex repression, perhaps. This might be the Freudian answer and also the easy way out, the mislabeling to avoid facing uncharted possibilities. But what evidence is there that it is anything else? There is no way to prove the above, because there's no means of determining the where of it. And the experience above, yes. In another, here's another one from the notes. January, February, March 4th, 1961. Late night, in the study, ground floor. Man, he gets out of body in all kinds of different places. The office, the study, at home. Yeah, there's like 4 or 5 different places he's doing this. I was not overtired and mentally alert. I deliberately induced the vibrations by the cut-down method. Again, no idea what that is. It was a Saturday night, and this is being written Sunday afternoon based upon notes during the night and later events. Some preliminary information. On Saturday afternoon, or yesterday, a friend of my wife, a woman, JF, let's call her, phoned to ask if she could visit us overnight. She arrived in time for dinner, and after a quiet and pleasant evening, we retired. Our guests going upstairs to the small square guest room in the front of the house, or so I assumed. I believed also that our 2 children were asleep in their own room, which is long and rectangular and directly over the study. I decided to sleep in the study rather than in the bedroom with my wife, as I felt that I could induce the vibrations and didn't want possibly to disturb her sleep. After many preliminaries, the vibrations came in strong and accelerated to a frequency beyond perception as individual pulsation. I lifted out of the physical body easily, and with a strong sense of release and control, went on up through the ceiling and the floor above and into a rectangular room. The room was dark, and I was sure I was in the children's bedroom, but could see no one. I was about to try to go somewhere else when I became aware of a woman in the room not too far from me. I could not discern her features, but she gave me the impression that she was in her middle 30s and that she was a woman of considerable sexual experience. That means she belongs to the streets. Maybe. That familiar radiation of characteristics. He has radiation in quotation marks. This latter sense brought forth my sex drive, and I was thanks, sorry, appreciate it, brother. And I was attracted to her. As I approached, she said, and he has a question mark here, she would rather not, because she was very tired. Ooh, he got rejected in the astral realm. I moved back, respecting her wishes, and indicated that it was perfectly all right. She seemed grateful, and I was considerate but disappointed. Then I noticed a second woman just to the right in the background. The second woman was older than the first and in her 40s, but was also a woman of wide sexual experience. The second woman moved forward and offered to be with me. He has "be" in quotation marks, as if she said, "I will. I'll do it," implying that if the first woman wouldn't, she would eagerly. I needed no further invitation at that stage, and we moved together quickly. There was the giddy electrical type shock, and then we separated. I thanked her, and she seemed calm and content. Feeling this was enough for one night, I turned and dove through the floor, and soon was re-entering the physical. I sat up and turned on the light. Everything was quiet in the house. I smoked a cigarette, and then laid down and slept for the rest of the night without incident. The next morning, or this morning, Sunday, I was up early as usual, and my wife came into the kitchen for coffee about 10. She debated about going upstairs and waking JF to go to church. Casually, she mentioned that she hoped JF slept comfortably because she had been so tired. Now, this did not strike a responsive note, but when she stated that JF had slept in the children's room instead of the guest room, in a supposedly more comfortable bed, and the children had slept in the guest room, it began to ring a bell. As stated, the children's room is rectangular and is directly over the study. Further, JF is in her middle 30s, a professional singer, and certainly has had a wide sexual experience. 2 husbands plus a number of love affairs, and to this the fact that she was very tired. Oh, that's a wide experience back then, I guess, huh? Just 2 husbands and some dudes in between? That's nothing nowadays, Bob. It took several minutes to get up enough courage to ask, but I had to know. My wife is fairly well indoctrinated by this time, and I asked my wife to go up and ask JF if she was sexually tired. You asked your wife that? She asked me what I meant, and I explained, and of course, she wanted to know why and said that she couldn't ask such a question. I said I was sure she could find out that it was important, and finally, she agreed and went upstairs to awaken JF, and I waited for a long time, and finally my wife came back downstairs alone, and she looked at me intently. How did you know? Thank goodness she didn't ask it suspiciously. But she went on. That's the reason she called and asked to come out. All week she has been having a violent love affair with sex every night. She told me she was just too tired to take another night of it. But apparently they were into that 50 Shades of Grayness back then in the 50s too, huh? A short time later, JF came down for breakfast. My wife, of course, had not told her anything of my interest in her condition, but she seemed her normal self for the rest of the day, with one exception. Ordinarily, JF treats me very casually as simply the husband of an old friend. Today I caught her staring at me intently again and again as if she were trying to remember something about me but couldn't. I gave no indication that I noticed this sudden interest. This was fairly good identification, but who was the other older woman? Anybody get the feeling that Bob kind of like already wanted to hook up with this chick secretly? I just get that feeling. He'd been married for years, this hot young singing woman comes in, he's acting like, oh, it's all just a big coincidence. But there's this mysterious connection. I kind of feel sorry for his wife a little bit. Just a little bit, not too, barely. All right, he's got aftermath here. March 7th, 1961. It's now Wednesday night. During the past few days, I had tried to figure out what the older woman might signify. I had just about decided that it was a non-living person still deeply attracted to physical sex relationships who followed JF around just to enjoy vicariously the latter's sexual activities, if this is possible. Wouldn't that be weird? Then, yesterday, a friend dropped by the office. In the course of the conversation, he mentioned that a mutual friend, R.W., had stated that she had a dream about me the past Saturday night. At the mention of Saturday night, I was immediately alert. R.W. was a businesswoman in her 40s. Although married, she definitely qualified as a woman of wide sexual experience, according to my own observations, but not participation. R.W. had not described to our mutual friend the nature of the dream, so I decided to find out. I was finally able to reach her by phone today. At first, R.W. was rather vague about the dream content, and at my gentle insistence, she stated that in the dream I gave her a detailed, quote, physical examination. Beyond that, she would not elaborate. Either she truly didn't recall anymore, or it was too much or too personal for her to relate to me. But the fact that she dreamed this on the same Saturday night, that it suggested some kind of intimacy and was important enough to her to mention it, that R.W. meets the characteristics I had listed previously. These are hard to label coincidence. If there has been any undercurrent of sexual desire for JF and R.W. on my part, I was not aware of it. Oh, I'm sure there was. There is some comfort in knowing these two are still among the living. Many of the experiments in the notes are also too personal for me to relate. What has been presented thus far will, I trust, give enough indication. Suffice it to say that there must have been a whole bunch of these experiences, right? What has been presented thus far will, I trust, give enough indication. Suffice it to say that there have been experiences of all types, as there are evidently all types in the second state, both in locale 1 and locale 2. The followers of the astral planes concept would say that the quality of those met would determine the level of the plane visited. Quality, in quotations, meaning intensity and or degradation of or elimination of the sexual experience. This would depend upon interpretation. Those who have not begun to understand the conditions of the second state, either alive or dead, might well still relate the pattern to that of the physical, only without the inhibitions and limitations of the civilized physical society. We continue to evaluate sexuality as good or bad, strictly in terms of such inhibitions, restrictions, and social structure. The fallacy of this viewpoint is shown in that in our own space-time continuum, we cannot reconcile sexual practice with social rules, nor agree on the subject among the various social orders now in existence. The sexual drive in itself can be a catalyst to the vibrational condition, which is the doorway to the second state. However, it is a tricky matter. It is like an exuberant child constantly testing the authority directing it and threatening to take over and run in another direction. But in no way is it evil in the second state. That's the end of that chapter. Now, again, I tell you guys this. Again, another parallel between the out-of-body experience people, including Robert Monroe, and the ceremonial magicians or occultists. I'm not talking about chaos magicians or whatever. I'm talking about, like Golden Dawn, Crowley magicians, OTO, these people. These people knew the power of the sexual desires, or the poles between male and female. In fact, it's not a big crazy thing. If you really look into our esoteric history, that's why we have so much sexual symbolism that goes all the way back to Egypt and even further, because we all live in one big orgasm. That's what reality is, actually. That's what I think. But it's also taught, though, in those. What I'm saying is, it's also taught in these esoteric texts, right, or these occult texts. And here you got a guy that I'm sure he's not reading any magic books or any books on the occult or any of that crap, right? He's just not doing it. And yet he's explaining this on a scientific level, like how this is kind of working or why it's always there, right? Even in the astral realm. All right, so the next one is preliminary exercises, where he finally starts to get into some techniques on how to get out of body. But let's go to the chat and see what you guys think. So I asked, and again, thanks for the $4.99, Ari, appreciate that. So I asked, do you think that cheating astrally is actually cheating? There is no cheating. Gene says there is no cheating in the multi-dimension. Did he marry under the promise of eternity? That's a good question. Angels prefer women. MJ says, now they're going to include in the marriage vows, do you take them in and out of body? Right. I'm not going to say that, Ari. Come on, dude. 50 Shades edition. Yeah, I think you should still, this is just my opinion, like if you're prevalent in getting out of body, and let's say you got a girlfriend or whatever, and she can get out of body, and you say, hey, by the way, like if I run into anybody in the astral and they want to meld or whatever, is this cool or not? Because I used to have a girlfriend, man, that would get mad at me about dreams that she was having about me cheating. I wasn't doing shit. I wasn't cheating on her, wasn't doing nothing. But like her insecurities would come out through her unconscious that would come out in her dreams, and then she would have a dream about it and then get pissed at me. Like all day mad at me because she had a dream that I cheated on her. So I can only think that if you went back and told that same girl, well, I had an out-of-body experience and melded with some, quote, females in the astral realm, it'd probably piss her off, like some people would get mad about that. I think you should have a healthy discussion about it. And no, I mean, the only experiences I had with it was when I was younger. When I was a kid, I think I got molested by astral women, actually. Tell you that story another day. But yeah, I want to say I was about 10 or whatever. I was living with my grandma. I remember it. Bryce, are you there, man? You got any opinions on this stuff before I move to the next one? Or do you think
no, I don't have any real opinions. No, just
crazy, isn't it? Crazy shit.
Yeah.
To think about, I wish he would have really wrote down like some of the stuff he was worried about, though. Like some of the stuff is too personal. Well, how can it be too personal if it's an electronic handshake? You know, that's what I don't get. All right. Moving on. Okay. So we're going to get into some exercises, preliminary exercises. Throughout this writing, I've made many references to one evident fact. The only possible way for an individual to appreciate the reality of the second body and existence within it is to experience it himself or herself. Obviously, if this were an easy task, it would now be commonplace, and I suspect that only innate curiosity will enable people to overcome the obstacles in the path of this achievement. Although there are many cases of existence experienced apart from the physical body, they have, for the most part, at least in the Western world, been a spontaneous one-time nature, occurring during moments of stress or physical disability. We are speaking of something entirely different, which can be objectively investigated. The experimental will want to proceed in a manner that will produce consistent results, perhaps not every time, but often enough to validate the evidence to his own satisfaction. I believe that anyone can experience existence in a second body if the desire is great enough. Whether or not anyone should is beyond the scope of my judgment. Evidence has led me to believe that most, if not all, human beings leave their physical bodies in varying degrees during sleep. Subsequent reading has proved that this idea is thousands of years old in man's history. If it is a valid premise, then the condition itself is not unnatural. On the other hand, conscious, willful practice of separation from the physical is contrary to the pattern, it would seem, in view of the limited data available. Harmful physical effects from such activity are undetermined. I have not detected, nor have any physicians, any physiological changes, good or bad, that can be attributed directly to the out-of-body experience. There have been many psychological changes that I recognize, and probably many more that I have not been aware of. However, even my friends in the psychiatric profession have not claimed that these have been detrimental. My gradual revision of basic concepts and beliefs is apparent in a number of ways throughout this writing. If these psychological and personality changes are truly harmful, there is not much that can be done about it now. A note of caution is in order here for those who are interested in experimenting. For once open, the doorway to this experience cannot be closed. More exactly, it is a case of you can't live with it and you can't live without it. The activity and resultant awareness are quite incompatible with the science, religion, and mores of the society in which we live. History is strewn with martyrs whose only crime was nonconformity. If your interest in research become commonly known, you run the risk of being labeled a freak or a phony or worse, and of being ostracized. In spite of this, something extremely vital would be missing if you did not continue to explore and investigate. In the unaccountable low periods when you cannot produce this activity, no matter how carefully you try, you realize this deeply. You have a strong sense of being left out of things, of the shutting out of a source of great meaning to living. This part, I know exactly what the hell he's talking about. Okay. Here, then, is the best written description I can give of the technique of developing the non-physical experience. This is called the fear barrier. And if you think about anything in life, in our lives, when we want to, like, supreme happiness or anything like that, there's also a fear barrier too. But this is specifically talking about fear as a barrier to the second state. There's one great obstacle to the investigation of the second body and the environment in which it operates. Perhaps it is the only major barrier, and it seems to be present in all people, without exception. It may be hidden by layers of inhibition and conditioning, but when these are stripped away, the obstacle remains. This is the barrier of blind, unreasoning fear. Given only small impetus, it turns to panic and then to terror. If you consciously pass the fear barrier, you will have passed a milestone in your investigation. I'm reasonably sure that this barrier is passed unconsciously by many of us each night. When that part of us beyond our consciousness takes over, it is not inhibited by fear, although it seems to be influenced by the thought and action of the conscious mind. It seems to be accustomed to operating beyond the fear barrier and understands better the rules of existence in this other world. When the conscious mind shuts down for the night, the supermind, and he has soul, it could be the soul, in question mark here, takes over. The investigative process relative to the second body and its environment appears to be a melding or blending of the conscious with the supermind. If this is accomplished, the fear barrier is overcome. The fear barrier is many-faceted. The most fearless of us think it doesn't exist until, much to our own surprise, we encounter it within ourselves. First and foremost, there is the death fear. Because separation from the physical body is much like what is expected at death. Early reactions to the experience are automatic. You think, get back in the physical quickly, you're going to die. Life is there in the physical, get back in it. These reactions appear in spite of any intellectual or emotional training, and only after repeating the process 18 to 20 times did I finally gather enough courage and curiosity to stay out more than just a few seconds and observe objectively. The death fear was either sublimated or assuaged by familiarity. Others who have tried the technique have stopped after the first or second experience, unable to suppress the first aspect of the barrier. The second aspect of the fear barrier is also linked with the death fear. Will I be able to return to the physical or get back in the physical body after I'm out? With no guidelines or specific instructions, this remained a prime fear of mine for several years until I found a simple answer that made it work every time. Mine was a matter of rationalization. I had been out several hundred times, and the evidence showed that I was able to return safely one way or the other. Therefore, the probability was that I would return safely the next time also. The third basic fear was fear of the unknown. The rules and dangers of our physical environment can be determined to a reasonable degree here on Earth when we're awake. We have spent our lifetime building up reflexes to cope with them. Now, suddenly, here is another completely different set of rules, another world of entirely different possibilities, populated by beings who seem to know all of them. You have no rule book, no roadmap, no book of etiquette, no applicable courses in physics and chemistry, no incontrovertible authority you can turn for advice and answers. Many a missionary has been killed in a remote land under such conditions. I must confess that this third fear still crops up, and with justification. The unknown is still a great degree unknown. That's the void, baby. Such penetration as I have made has brought forth pitifully few unalterable, inconsistent rules. I can say only that to date I have survived these expeditions. There is so much that I do not comprehend or understand, and more that is beyond my ability to do so. Another fear, this is a whole bunch of fears here, but another fear is the consequent effects on the physical body as well as on the conscious mind of participation and experimentation in this form of activity. This too is very real, as our history, at least to my knowledge, does not seem to contain accurate reporting of this area. We have studies on paranoia, schizophrenia, phobias, epilepsy, alcoholism, sleeping sickness, acne, virus diseases, etc., but no assembled body of objective data on the pathology of the second body or out-of-body experience. I do not know how to circumvent the fear barrier, except by cautious initial steps that create familiarity bit by bit as you proceed. I hope this writing in its entirety will provide the psychological step over the barrier. It may help to recognize conditions and patterns that are familiar and that at least one person has had similar experiences and survived. The following are the necessary procedural developments. Well, damn. That was a pretty good explanation of the fear barrier, I think. Number 1, relaxation. The ability to relax is the first prerequisite, perhaps even the first step itself. It is deliberately generated and is both physical and mental. Included with the condition of relaxation must be the relief from any sense of time urgency. You cannot be in a hurry. No pending appointments or anticipated calls for your services or attention must clutter up your thoughts. Impatience of any sort can effectively stifle your prospects for success. There are many techniques available for obtaining this kind of relaxation and a number of good books over the subject. Simply select the method that works best for you. There are 3 great general methods that seem to work, 2 of which are applicable in these exercises. Auto or self-hypnosis. Most self-study books offer this method in different versions, but again, it is a matter of which end is most effective for you individually. The most efficient and speediest way is to learn self-hypnosis through the training of an experienced hypnotist. He can set up post-hypnotic suggestions that will bring immediate results in you. However, select a tutor with care. Responsible practitioners are rare and neophytes numerous. Forms of meditation can be converted to effective relaxation. The borderland sleep state is next. And this is perhaps the easiest and most natural method. So you got relaxation, then the borderland sleep state or hypnagogic state. So this is perhaps the easiest and most natural method and usually ensures relaxation of the body and mind simultaneously. The difficulty here lies in the maintenance of that delicate edge between sleep and complete wakefulness. All too often you simply fall asleep, and that ends the experiment for the moment. By practice, conscious awareness can be taken up to this borderland state, into it, and through it to your destination. There is no way to achieve it that I know of any other than practice. The technique is as follows. Lie down, preferably when you are tired and sleepy. As you become relaxed and start to drift off into sleep, hold your mental attention on something, anything, with your eyes closed. Once you can hold the borderland state indefinitely without falling asleep, you have passed the first stage. It is, however, a normal pattern to fall asleep many times in the process of this conscious deepening. You will not be able to help yourself, but do not let this discourage you. It is not an overnight process. You will know when you're successful when you become bored and expect something more to happen. If attempts to remain at the borderland state make you nervous, this too is a normal reaction. The conscious mind seems to resent sharing the authority it has during wakefulness. If this occurs, break the relaxation, get up and walk around, exercise, and then just lie down again. If this does not relieve the nervousness, go to sleep and try another time. You're just not in the mood. When you're fixative, the picture thought you have been holding slips away and you find yourself thinking of something else. You're close to a completion of condition A. Once you have achieved condition A, or the ability to hold calmly in the borderland state indefinitely your mind on an exclusive thought, you're ready for the next step, condition B, which is similar, but with the concentration eliminated. Do not think of anything, but remain poised between wakefulness and sleep. Simply look through your closed eyes at the blackness ahead of you. Do nothing more. After a number of these exercises, you may hallucinate or have mind pictures or light patterns. These seem to have no great significance and may merely be forms of neural discharge. I can remember, for example, attempting to achieve this state after watching a football game on TV for several hours. All I saw were mind pictures of football players tackling, running, passing, etc., but it took at least half an hour for the patterns to fade away. These mind pictures are apparently related to your visual concentration in the preceding 8 or 10 hours. The more intense the concentration, the longer it seems to take to eliminate the impressions. You have accomplished condition B when you're able to lie indefinitely after the impressions have faded away, with no nervousness and seeing nothing but blackness. Well, so you passed the fear barrier, you're able to relax, you figured out how to get between sleep and awake without, going to sleep. and you're getting past all the little mind movies that the hypnagogic state is showing you. And once that's over, now you're at condition C. Condition C is a systematic deepening of consciousness while in the B state. This is approached by carefully letting go of your rigid hold on the borderland sleep edge and drifting deeper, little by little, during each exercise. You'll learn to establish degrees of this deepening of consciousness by, quote, going down to a given level and returning at will. You will recognize these degrees by the shutting down of various sensory mechanism inputs, or you'll start getting sleep paralysis, what'll happen. The sense of touch apparently goes first. You'll seem to have no feeling in any part of your body. Smell and taste will soon follow. The auditory signals are next, and the last to fade out is your vision. Sometimes the last two are reversed, but I suspect the reason for vision being last is the exercise calls for the use of the visual network even in the blackness. Now, so condition C, to me, sounds like a big paragraph explaining sleep paralysis. Condition D is the achievement of C when one is fully rested and refreshed, rather than tired and sleepy at the beginning of the exercise. This is quite important, and not nearly as easy to achieve as it is to write about it. To enter the relaxation state, but full of energy and wakefulness, is great insurance for maintaining conscious control. The best approach to take in the early attempts at the condition D exercise is to start it immediately after you wake up from a nap or a night's sleep. Start the exercise before you move around in bed physically, while your body is still relaxed from sleep and your mind is fully alert. Don't take too many liquids before going to bed or sleeping, and you won't have the immediate need to empty your bladder upon awakening. This next part is called induction by drugs. None of the relaxation-producing drugs that are readily available seem to help. Barbiturates force a loss of consciousness control and only bring a confused state and deeper consciousness. The same is true to a lesser degree of tranquilizers. Relaxation is obtained, but the cost of perception and consciousness. Alcohol in any form brings similar effects. More exotic compounds, such as the alkaloids and hallucinogens, may be more productive, but I have not had enough experience or contact with these to offer an opinion or even an educated guess. It would seem that the far-reaching research is indicated for these. I have utilized all three methods and rejected drug relaxation quite early, as it resulted in both too much loss of conscious control and distorted perceptions. In the first technique, hypnotic induction tapes were specially prepared for the experiments. They were quite useful and effective. The borderland sleep state techniques have been employed most often, and in spite of the complicated sounding procedure, it is most natural. It is a most natural method for me. Next is the state of vibration, which we might, I gotta grab a drink too. My throat is dry. Yeah. So the next part, we're still in the same chapter, but he's going to the next part of how to get out of body, which is called the state of vibration. And I'm going to take just a short break before we read that. Be right back. Stay with us.
Saturday morning and it's time to go. One of these could be the days, but who could have known? Loading in the back of a pickup truck, riding with the boys and pushing the luck, singing songs loud on the way to the game, wishing all the things could still be the same. Shining someone's over the backstop, Kakua on the ball and soda pop. Well, we used to laugh a lot, but only because we thought that everything good always would remain. Nothing gonna change, there's no need to complain. Sunday morning and it's time to go. Been raining all night so everybody knows. Over to the field for tackle football. Big hits, big hats, yeah, give me the ball. Rain is pouring, touchdown scoring. Keep on rolling, never boring. Come on, chameleon. We're talking kind of funny from helium. Well, we used to laugh a lot, but only because we thought that everything good always books and sand on my toes. Do anything you can to dodge the bus stop blues. Like driving up a ditto with the burnt out fuse. Well, my best friend Kenny wants to go with you. So meet her by the sugar mill after school. My best friend Kenny wants to go with you. Meet her by the sugar mill after school. And we used to laugh a lot, but only because we thought that everything good always would remain. We used to laugh a lot, but only because we thought that everything good always would, everything good always would remain.
All right. The vibratory state. That was a long, first, I can't believe it takes 16 chapters in his book, even though, I've read it before, but it's still weird to me every time that it takes 16 chapters for him to get to where he starts teaching how to get out of body. But all right, so the state of vibration, the generation of this effect is the most critical of all. And I'll tell you guys, in my experience, it is definitely the most critical part if you're going to have a full-blown etheric out-of-body projection. So the subjective sensory impression it creates is described elsewhere, but once it is achieved, you will certainly not have to be told you've been successful, and you will have passed another major hurdle. All that can be given are clues. At the present level of knowledge, it is not known why these things work. It is much like turning a switch to obtain light without having any idea of what the switch does. Where the electricity comes from, or why or how it acts upon a bulb enclosing tungsten filaments, you just don't know. At the least, all of the material contained herein has been established as empirically as possible. Aside from the principal human laboratory, this writer, several other individuals have tried the pattern, and suffice it to say they have obtained positive results. So, here are some aids to the vibrational state. Lie down in whatever position is most conducive to your state of relaxation, but with your body along a north-south axis, with your head to magnetic north. Loosen any clothes you may be wearing. Keep covered so that you feel just slightly warmer than is generally comfortable for you. Remove any jewelry or metal objects close to or touching your skin. Be sure that your arms, legs, and neck will relax in a position that will not impede circulation. Darken the room enough to ensure that no light can be seen through your eyelids. Do not use a completely blacked out room, as you will then have no visual point of reference. Here are some absolute requisites. Ensure without question that you will not be disturbed in any way, either by direct physical intervention or a phone ringing or other interrupting noises. Don't set a time limit or a deadline. The time you spend in the experiment is not more valuably spent elsewhere, and you should have nothing impending that might cut short this activity. Achieve the state of relaxation. Do this by whatever method you have found workable in your own individual case. Then work to condition D or its equivalent and hold at the deepest level of relaxation possible without weakening your consciousness. When you have taken as much time as you need to be sure you have obtained this, mentally repeat, quote, I will consciously perceive and remember all that I encountered during this relaxation period. I will recall in detail, when I am completely awake, only those matters that will be beneficial to my physical and mental being. Say this mentally 5 times, then begin breathing through your half-opened mouth. Begin to establish the vibration waves, and as you continue breathing through your half-opened mouth, concentrate on the blackness in front of your closed eyes. Look first into the blackness at a spot a foot away from your forehead. Now move your point of concentration to 3 feet away and then 6 feet. Hold for a while until the point is firmly established. From there, turn the point 90 degrees upwards on a line parallel to the body axis and reaching out above the head. Reach for the vibrations at that spot. When you find them, mentally pull them back into your head. This simple description must pose many questions. Reach out with what? What's up, Dragon Rose? Pull what back into your head? Let us try another method of explanation. Begin a mental concentration as if 2 lines were extending from the outer sides of your closed eyes. Think of them as converging at a point a foot away from your forehead. Visualize a resistance or pressure when these two lines meet, as if two charged electrical wires were joined, or poles of a magnet forced together. Now extend this juncture outward to about 3 feet, or the length of your arms outstretched. Due to the angular difference, the pressure pattern is altered. A compression of the space, or forces, between the converging lines must result, and the pressure must therefore increase to maintain the convergence. After the 3-foot length has been established and held, extend the intersection point out to 6 feet away from your head, or about 30 degrees. Now, this is so that you can properly visualize the exact angle that represents 30 degrees. It may help to mark off a 30-degree angle by a protractor on a paper and memorize how it looks. Once you have learned to, I've never used this method, by the way, any of these methods. Once you have learned to establish and maintain the 30-degree angle outwardly, or roughly 6 feet away, bend the point of the intersection 90 degrees or in an L, upward in the direction of your head, but parallel to the axis of your body. You reach, or quote, reach, with this point of intersection. Stretch or reach out with this point more and more until you obtain a reaction. Again, you will know when you've obtained it. It is as if surging or hissing, rhythmically pulsating wave of fiery sparks comes roaring into your head. From there, it seems to sweep throughout your body, making it rigid and immobile. And once you have learned the process or the concept, it will not be necessary to go through the entire routine. You just need to think of the vibrations while in a relaxed state, and they will come into being. A conditioned reflex has been established, or a neuron path that can be followed again and again. Again, it is not a technique that can be achieved the first time it is tried. The probability of success increases with each successive effort. The more you try it, the more likely you're to have positive results. However, once you have succeeded, it is not always repeatable at will. There are still many variables that interfere with which you have yet to be isolated and identified. But it does work, in quotations, work, often enough to be subjected to continued study. The next part is part 3, the control of the vibrations. When you obtain the vibrational state, there are definite guidelines to follow. The utilization of this condition under conscious control is the goal you're seeking. To accomplish this, there are careful procedures to observe. They should, of course, be followed in sequence in the order presented. There is no evidence to indicate that this vibrational state has a deleterious effect on either the mind or the physical body. Here, then, are some procedures that can be applied systematically. They are a distillate of literary hundreds of trial and error experiments. Accumulation and accommodation. Now, this is a way of saying that you should let yourself get accustomed to feel of this usual or unusual condition. All fear and panic must be eliminated when you feel waves like an electric shock without pain permeating your body. The best method seems to be to do nothing when they occur. That's what I do. I mean, the first time I got out of body, I just let the vibrations just go through me and just stayed relaxed. Because every time I tried to get out, when the vibrations happened, it would screw it up. So the first time it happened, I just relaxed and let them just vibrate until it kind of started to go away, and then I got out. So lie objectively and analyze the vibrations. Analyze them until they fade away of their own accord. This usually takes place in about 5 minutes, and after several such experiences, you will realize you're not being electrocuted. Try to avoid panicky struggling to break the paralyzing condition. You can break it by sitting up with great force of will, but you will be disappointed with yourself for doing so. After all, this is what you were trying to achieve. So the next part is manipulation and modulation. So once you've eliminated the fear reactions, you're ready for control steps. First, mentally direct the vibrations into a ring, or force them all into your head. Then mentally push them down along your body to your toes, then back up to your head. Start them sweeping in a wave over your body rhythmically from head to toes and then back again. After you've given the wave of momentum, let it proceed of its own accord until it fades away. It should take about 10 seconds, 5 down, 5 back, for the wave to make the complete circuit from head to toe and back. Practice this until the vibration wave begins instantly upon mental command and move steadily until it fades out. By this time, you will have noticed the roughness of the vibrations at times, as if your body is being severely shaken right down to the molecular or atomic level. This may be somewhat uncomfortable, and you'll feel a desire to smooth them out. And this is accomplished by pulsing, in quotations, pulsing them mentally to increase their frequency. Their original vibratory rate seems to be on the order of some 27 cycles per second. This is the rate of the vibration itself, not the head-to-toe frequency. The pattern responds to this pulsing command very subtly and slowly at first, and your first indication of success is when the vibrations no longer seem rough and shaking. You're well on your way to control when they produce a steady, solid effect. It's essential that you learn and apply this speed-up process. The faster vibration effect is the form that permits disassociation from the physical. The faster vibration effect is the form that... Okay. So once you have set the momentum of the speed up, the acceleration seems to take place automatically. And eventually, you may sense the vibrations only as they begin. They will increase their frequency like a motor starting up, until the frequency is so high that you're unable to perceive it. At this phase, the sensory effect is one body, he says the sensory effect is one of body warmth, slightly tingling, but not excessively so. Consistent achievement of this stage is the sign that you're ready for the first physical disassociation experiment. Another word of warning is in order here. Beyond this point, I believe you cannot turn back. Ultimately, you'll be committed to the reality of this other existence. How this will affect your personality, your daily life, your future, and your philosophies rests entirely with you as an individual. For once you have been opened to this other reality, you cannot completely shut it out again, try as you might. The pressure of material affairs may sublimate it for a time, but it will return. You cannot always stay on guard against its reopening. And as you start to sleep or awaken, when you merely relax, the vibrational surge may come without call. You can shut it off, of course, but eventually you become too tired to bother, and you're off on another excursion. You sense that you are fighting against yourself, and who wants to fight oneself at the price of a good night's sleep? Well, I think a lot of that, and that's the end of the next chapter is called The Separation Process, but I think that's really a personal thing, because that whole... You notice like that whole, like all of his directions on how to do this are not really in the Monroe Institute stuff or the Gateway Experience. So this was like I think this was like his very first instructions on how to get out of body before he, did the Gateway Experience or something. Because that's just, the whole 30-degree, 90-degree L shape. All that stuff is just too complicated. Not that it's not cool. It's just too complicated. Let me see how long this is before I try to attempt it. Because the next part, the separation process, is pretty cool. Yeah, it's not that long. I mean, once you get to the vibration state and you play with that for a while, I think like the separation process it's going to be inevitable at some point. All right, so after you've achieved a state of vibration and some control of your stage of relaxation, one additional factor must be considered. It's probable that you've already obtained it since it's ordinarily a product of the previous exercise. However, it should be emphasized. The factor is thought control. In the state of vibration, you are apparently subject to every thought, both willful and involuntary, that crosses your mind. Thus, you must be as close to no thought, or a single thought, or concentration as possible. If one stray idea passes through your mind, you respond instantly and sometimes in an undesirable manner. I suspect that one is never completely free of such misdirection, but at least I have not been, which may account for the many inexplicable trips to places and people I do not know. They seem to be triggered by thoughts or ideas I didn't even realize I had, which were below the conscious level. The only approach is to do the best that you can here. Now, with this in mind, the first practices of disassociating the second from the physical body should be limited in time and action. What follows is designed basically as a familiarization and orientation technique, which should permit an approach to disassociation without fear or concern. The release of your extremities. Now, this serves to acquaint you with the sensation of the second body with full commitment. After relaxation and creation of the vibrational state, work with either your right or left hand and arm, one at a time. This is important as it will be your first affirmation of the reality of the second. With one hand, reach for any object, floor or wall, door or whatever. Reach for those that you remember as being beyond the reach of your physical arm. Reach for that object. So like if you're starting the separation process in the vibrational state, start reaching for an object that your arm normally wouldn't be able to reach, or your physical arm wouldn't be able to reach, or your leg, or whatever you decide to use. Make the reaching process neither upward nor downward, but out in the direction your arm is pointing. Reach as if you are stretching your arm, not raising it or lowering it. A variation is simply to reach out with the hand and arm in the same manner, with no special object in mind. Often this method is better, as you then have no preconceived idea of what you should, quote, feel. When you reach out in this fashion and feel nothing, push your hand a little further. Keep pushing gently as if stretching your arm until your hand encounters some material object. If the vibration pattern is in effect, it will work, and your hand will eventually feel or touch something. When it does, examine with your sense of touch the physical details of the object. Feel for any cracks, grooves, or unusual details which you will later be able to identify. At this point, nothing will seem unusual. Your sensory mechanisms will tell you that you are touching the object with your physical hand. Here, then, is your first test. After acquainting yourself with the object with your outstretched hand, straighten out your hand and push against the object with your fingertips. You will encounter resistance at first, but push a little harder and gently overcome the resistance you feel. At this point, your hand will seem to go right through the object. Keep pushing until your hand is completely through the object and meets some other physical object. Identify the second object by touch. Then carefully withdraw your hand back through the first object and slowly back to normal so that it feels as if it's where it belongs. And belongs is in quotations too. With this, decrease the vibrations. The best way to do this is slowly to attempt to move the physical body. Think of the physical body and open your physical eyes. Bring back your physical senses deliberately. Once the vibrations have faded away completely, lie still for a few minutes for a full and complete return, then get up and make a notation of the object which you, quote, felt, locating it relative to the position of your hand and arm when you were lying down. Note the details of both the first and second objects with which you felt. Having done this, compare your description with the actual first objects. Make special notes of small details which you could not have seen from a distance. Physically feel the object to compare it with what you felt under the vibrations. Examine the second object in the same manner. You may not have been consciously aware of its presence or position prior to the experiment. This too is important. Test the line of direction from the place where your physical hand lay, through the first object and up to the second. Is it a straight line? Check your results. Was the first object you touched physically located at a distance it would have been absolutely impossible to reach without physical movement? Did the details of the object, especially the minute details, coincide with the notes you have made? Make the same comparison for the second object. If your answers are affirmative, you've had your first success. If the facts don't check out, try again another day. Almost without qualification, if you have produced the vibrational state, you can perform this exercise. You can also practice the following quite easily. After producing the vibrational state, lying on your back, arms either at your sides or on your chest, gently lift your arms without looking at them and touch your fingers together. Do this quite casually, abstractly, and remember the sensory results. Once you've clasped your hands above your chest, look at them first with your closed eyes, and if you have moved easily enough, you will see both physical and non-physical arms. Your physical arms will be at rest at your sides or upon your chest. The sensory impressions will be with the non-physical arms and hands above your physical body. You should test this phenomenon as many times as you wish, however you desire. Prove to yourself that you are moving, not your physical arms, but something else. Do it by whatever means are necessary to give you full assurance of this reality. It's important always to return your non-physical arms to full conjunction with their physical counterparts before shutting off the vibrational state. Although there may be no severe after effect if this is not done, I think it's best not to find out in the early stages. Another technique is called the disassociation technique. This is the simplest method to use in separating from the physical is the lift-out procedure. The intent here is not to travel to far-off places, but to get acquainted with the sensation in your own room with familiar surroundings. The reason for this is the first true experience will then be examined and explored with identifiable points of reference. In order to assist in this orientation, it is better that these first complete disassociation exercises be conducted during daylight. Test for yourself your needs in regard to the amount of light in the room. Avoid using an electric light if possible. To establish the condition, achieve the vibrational state and maintain complete control of your thought processes. You're going to stay only in the confines of your familiar room. Think of getting lighter or floating upwards, of how nice it would be to float upwards. Be sure to think of how nice it would be, as the subjective associated thought is most important. You want to do this because it is something you will respond to emotionally. You'll react even before the act in anticipation. If you continue to hold only these thoughts, you will disassociate and float gently upward from your physical. You may not achieve it the first time, or even the second, but quite surely if you have accomplished the preceding exercises, you will achieve it. Another method is the rotation technique, which has been mentioned elsewhere in this book. Under the same prescribed conditions, slowly just try to turn over, just as if you were turning over in bed to be more comfortable. Make no attempt to help yourself rotate with either arms or legs. Start turning by twisting the top of your body, your head, and your shoulders first. By all means, move slowly, exerting gentle but firm pressure. If you do not, you may become loose and actually spin like a log rolling in water before you can alter the pressure. I don't know why it's funny. I'm just thinking about someone just spinning out of control in their astral body. Such action is disconcerting only because you may lose all orientation and be forced to find your way back carefully in rotation juncture. The ease with which you begin to turn, with no friction or sense of weight, will inform you that you have begun to succeed in disassociating. As this happens, turn slowly until you feel that you have moved 180 degrees, or face to face with your physical body. It is uncanny how you'll recognize this position. This 180-degree about face is merely two 90-degree turns, and without orientation, it is easy to sense. Now, once you're in this 180-degree position, stop the rotation merely by thinking of doing so, and without hesitation, think of floating upward, backing up away from the physical body. Again, if you have reached the vibrational state successfully, this method will surely bring results. One of the two separation techniques, the first should be tried before the second. Then after both have been examined and tested, the one that seems easiest to you should be utilized. Some local experiments in familiarization. Once you have succeeded in the separation process, it is most important for your own objective continuity that you remain in complete control. The only possible way to do this seems to be by staying close to the physical in the early stages. That's kind of what I do. I don't try to go like super far away or anything. This admonition is made not because of any known danger, but so that you will maintain a step-by-step familiarity and thus perceive yourself exactly as what has taken place. Wild, uncontrolled trips at this stage may well produce uncomfortable situations and conditions that will force you to relearn much of what you have already achieved. The process of mental acclimation will be different from any you have ever consciously experienced. The gradual adaptation will greatly enhance your peace of mind and confidence. At this point, the principal exercise is to return. Keep your separation distance no more than 3 feet away, hovering over the physical. Do not make any attempt at this time to move laterally or further up. How do you know how far away you are? Again, this is something you sense. Your vision now is 0. You have conditioned yourself not to open your eyes and let them remain closed for the moment. Stay close to the physical. The mental concept of this will keep you in proper range. For the next 3 or 4 exercises, do nothing but practice getting out and returning to the physical. To return under these conditions, merely think yourself back into the physical and you will return. If you have used the first method of separation and the reintegration is relatively simple. When you're back in exact alignment, you will be able to move any portion of the physical body and reactivate any of all your physical senses. Any or all. And each time you return, open your physical eyes and physically sit up so that you know you're completely back together. This is to ensure orientation, to instill confidence that you can return at will, and most important, to assure yourself of continued contact with the material world in which you now belong. Whatever you believe, this reassurance is most necessary. If you have applied the rotation method, move slowly back towards the physical, again by thinking of it, and when you feel you have made complete contact, start your rotation back 180 degrees to conjunction with the physical. It doesn't seem to make any difference whether you continue the circle of rotation in reverse and turn back in a motion opposite to that which helped you release. In both techniques, there seems to be a slight click-like jerk when you are again in conjunction with the physical. An exact description of this sensation is quite difficult, but you will recognize it. Always wait a few moments before sitting up after you've returned, primarily to avoid any possible uneasiness. Give yourself some time to readjust to the physical environment. The physical act of sitting up provides evidence of continuity in a demonstrable form. You will know that you can consciously, willfully, act in a physical movement, interspersed with experiments in the non-physical environment, and retain conscious awareness throughout the process. You will have completed the cycle when you're able to separate, return to the physical, sit up, and note the time. Go back to the separation process and return to the physical a second time, all without the loss of conscious continuity. The notation of the clock reading will help in this. The next step in familiarization is to separate to a slightly further distance, applying the same procedures. Any distance up to 10 feet will do. Always keep mental concentration on a single purpose without stray thought patterns, especially in these extended exercises. After you've become accustomed to the feeling of being more apart, mentally tell yourself that you can see. Do not think of the act of opening your eyes, as this may well transmit you to the physical and diminish the vibrational state. Instead, think of seeing that you can see, and you will see. There will be no sensation of eye openings. The blackness will just disappear suddenly, and at first your seeing might be dim, as if in half light, indistinct or myopic. It's not known at present why this is so, but with use your vision will become more sharp. The first sight of your physical body lying below you should not be unnerving if you have applied the previous exercises. After you are satisfied that it is you lying there, visually examine the room from the perspective of your position. Mentally move slightly in one direction or another, slowly and never violently. Move your arms and legs to reassure yourself of your mobility. Roll around and cavort in the new element if you wish, always staying within the prescribed range of the physical body. At this stage, you may be filled with strong desires which can be almost overwhelming. This is the greatest problem you may face at the moment. These desires, appearing unannounced and unexpectedly, are subjective and emotional and can easily submerge the deductive reasoning position you have built up so carefully. The most important clue is to understand that they must not be labeled evil or wrong. I think he's talking about that sex desire again. They simply just exist, and you must learn to cope with them. The rule is, do not deny the existence of these desires. Recognize them as a deep, integral part of you that cannot be thought away. And until you do this, you'll be unable to control them. These desires include freedom to revel in the released form, the physical limitations and gravitational effects, sexual contact, first with a loved one, then at a strictly sensory level. Religious ecstasy, varying based upon the intensity of early life conditioning, and other desires that may originate in unusual environmental experiences of the individual. The belief held here is that everyone will have these subjective desires despite the most stringent discipline and self-analysis. What we speak of are those elements far below surface consciousness that comprise our own fundamental character and personality. As has been explained earlier, these elements emerge because you are no longer just a conscious intellectual self. You are, perhaps, for the first time, an entirety. Every part of you will be heard from and must be considered in any action you take. The trick is to keep the conscious reasoning you are the one most cognizant of the physical world in a dominant position, and that's not easy. Therefore, you'll run into problems if you attempt a denial of self, and instead you must accept these sometimes surprising drives for what they are a part of you, and go on about your business. You cannot eliminate them, but you can set them aside for the moment. Offer the promise of future fulfillment, and you will have no resistance. These needs can understand diversion, as if they have been subjected to it for as long as you have lived. When you have reasonably dealt with these other parts of you and have demonstrated that to your satisfaction 5 to 7 times in a near separation condition, in the same room, at close vicinity, you're ready for more distant and specific voyages. All of the foregoing presumes that you have overcome most of the fears you have encountered up to this stage. If you have not, repeat the exercises which produce fear until familiarity washes it away. Sometimes there's an infallible return signal. As noted, the fear of being unable to re-enter the physical is a basic deterrent to leaving the body. In my early experimentation, I encountered this problem many times. Happily, a solution was found whenever this difficulty presented itself. After careful analysis of hundreds of tests, an infallible technique was evolved. The only guarantee that can be given is that it has continued to work for me. First, if you have difficulty, don't panic. And above all, keep your rational thought process dominant. Terror only aggravates the situation. Internalize this simple formula and call upon it to return to the physical form whenever you are. Think of your physical body. Mentally begin to move some part of your physical body. Move a finger or a toe. And physically take a deep, deliberate breath of air. Reactivate your 5 physical senses or any of them. Move your jaw, swallow, or move your tongue. Any act that must involve physical motion or use of physical energy will work. If one doesn't immediately take effect, then try another. But without question, some such thought action will bring you back into the physical. It is merely a question of which one works best with you. When this technique is applied, return is virtually immediate. It is an automatic direction finder and rocket blast combined, and reintegration seems to be instantaneous when this is used. However, this immediate return method eliminates your power of choice or decision. Once it's put into effect, you can't stop it. You will return to the physical without any opportunity to know what is happening and how it is taking place. Thus, it should be thought of as an emergency reserve measure rather than a consistent step in your methodology. Under ordinary conditions, you should think or feel of the direction and location of your physical body, then with no urgency and in a calm, willful manner, start to return. Yeah, so I guess he's saying like, if you have to, if it's an emergency, you can just start trying to move parts of your body, and you'll eventually be in your physical and start to wake up. But you don't want to do that unless it's an emergency. So if it's not, just start trying to, work your way back towards your body. So here's some mechanics of movement. Now that you have set up your proper controls, including the emergency return signal, you're ready for the most momentous step of all. To go to a distant point and return. It is definitely not advisable deliberately to attempt this exercise before you have completed all previous tests and are at ease with them. It is quite possible that you may have inadvertently gone to a distant point during the early stages. If this is the case, you can recognize the importance of the following procedure. First, set your aiming point. Remember the rule, You must go to a person, not to a place. It may be possible to achieve the latter if you have a deep emotional attachment to the place or locale, but the experiments to date have shown little success along this line. This, of course, may be due to the personality of the writer, I guess, but select the person, living, hopefully, whom you desire to visit. Choose someone you know quite well. Do not inform this person that you are making the test. This is most important so as to rule out any suggestion on his or her part. Make the selection. Don't do that shit to me, by the way. I'm just saying. I'm not welcome to unwelcomed astral trips. You might get a surprise you don't like. But I think the reason why he's saying do this is so that you can confirm that it actually happened, you know. So make the selection before you enter the vibrational state and before you start your relaxation process. Establish relaxation and the vibrational state. Use your chosen method to separate. Move away to a near distance, 6 or 7 feet from the physical, and with your vision still in blackness, cautiously think of the person whom you plan to visit. Think not only of the name, but of the personality and character of that person. Do not try to visualize a physical being, for it is the reflection of the inner person that will attract you rather than the physical attributes. As you think in this pattern, turn yourself around slowly in a 360-degree rotation. Somewhere in the circuit you will feel the right direction. It is an intuitive thing, a sureness that attracts you like a gentle magnet. Even so, you can check for verification. Go past this point in your turn and come back to it again. Again, you will sense it very strongly. Stop facing this direction. Think that you have vision and begin to see. To give yourself motion towards your destination, employ a total second body version of the stretch, which you practiced in your first exercise with hand and arm. The easiest method is to place your non-physical arms over your head, thumbs latched together like a driver about to plunge into water. And with your arms in this position, think of the person you wish to visit and stretch your body in that direction. That's so freaking weird, isn't it? You may move fast or slowly, depending upon the effort of this stretching action, but the harder you stretch, the faster you will go. And at your destination, you will automatically stop stretching without realizing it. To return, apply a similar method. Think of your physical body, reach out, and stretch, and you will return promptly. Usually no more is required than this. There is some speculation regarding the necessity of keeping your arms in the driving position. Originally, it was assumed that this stance would break a path or ward off any encountered objects with the hands rather than the head. It does help to create the stretching action better than keeping the arms at the sides. So there you have it. The foregoing may seem ritualistic, but it is not intended to. It may appear no better than the magic formula of the Middle Ages. To date, there are no explanations of why the technique works, and perhaps in the years to come, interested and curious physicists, chemists, neurologists, and other scientists will develop workable theories to fit the action. If enough people undertake to examine it empirically, perhaps a new science will result. In the meantime, the boundaries can disappear for you too. If you have courage and patience, the only way you can accept and know this extended reality is to experience it yourself. Good luck. Man, I never went to anybody. Like the next chapter is called Analysis of Events, so he gets back into some more out of body experiences. But so that was 15, 16, and 17, which was the first one was the sexual force, and I guess 16 was. They both seem like 16 and 17 both seem like the separation process, but whatever. But I never went to anybody other than my dad, right? But I totally get what he's talking about when it comes to the stretching thing. Because you do the same thing. Like I did the same thing when I got out and I wanted to fly. It wasn't like I was flying like fucking Peter Pan or something like that. I'd literally look. I remember there's a tree right over there, and I remember looking at it, like looking at a specific limb that I wanted to fly to, and then I felt myself like being pulled towards it, like if I was on a zip line or something. It did feel like kind of a stretch, actually, but I remember a lot of these illusions in the state, which I don't know if these are illusions. They start to go away as he gets into the second and third book because he starts to turn himself into different shapes and things, but whatever. We're going to roll out of here, though. Interesting. Well, we're getting close to the end of the book, though. We still have 18, 19, 20. Yeah, there's only just a few chapters left, actually. It's pretty trippy. All right, you guys. Thanks for coming out. Thanks for hanging and going through the book with me. Journeys Out of the Body by Robert Monroe. Thanks for your support, Ari. And anybody that listens after too. We're going to keep this journey going until there is no more Robert Monroe material left. Good night, y'all. Sweet dreams. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. See you on the next broadcast.